Okay. You need that?
They can.
All right.
Well, good. I'm Perry. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Perry.
It's my sober date is August 10th of 1998, and kind of like what Jack touched on. You know, it's. I always thought I know where AA is, so I can go out and come back. I can always go out and come back. But after being in these rooms now for 25 years, I know a lot of people that went out and never came back. And I never understood that. I was playing with my life to that degree. But you know, it's I've done a lot of things, and you know, I have 7 DWIs back in the 70s and 80s. And, you know, you used to get pulled over, the police thought of you as a son, and they just go, if I see you in an hour, I'm hauling you in. And then that stopped. But in 1987, I was, I just stopped to have a drink because I was going to prove to myself I was a social drinker. So I stopped in mid-November 1987 to have a drink, and it was a place in St. Paul, Minnesota. And it turned out it was the Minnesota Vikings were the bartenders. So the place was really packed. And so that night I started drinking gin and tonics because they smell like Christmas trees. You know, and went in for one drink, and that's all I was going to have, and then go home. And I ended up being in a one-car accident where I flew down a big hill. Witnesses said it rolled 7 times before it came to a stand, before I stopped on the side. And they ended up calling, taking me to the hospital in St. Paul, and they called they had a doctor that was flown in by helicopter to the hospital. And I thought, well, gee, that's odd. And it was because they'd never seen a person that had the injuries that I had survive. They said, we don't even keep statistics on them because it's less than 2%. That scared me sober. That scared me so because I had sons that were like 3 and 5. And to have your son, you know, be lifted up to your bed, it was heartbreaking for me. So I managed to stay sober for 17 months on my own. And you want to have a life of misery, go out and be a dry drunk, you know, and don't work the program and don't do anything. But it was 17 months. And I was, you know, instead of going to a meeting, I might go shopping for an hour, you know, to keep my wife happy. And I just didn't want what you guys had. But I was afraid that I would die, as I should have. And that kept me sober for 27 months. I'd have one other period where I went 27 months sober, and I went to a few meetings. And it wasn't until I got, let's see, it would be August 10th of 1998. I've been through treatments, multiple treatments. My driver's license was popped. You know, and I became the guy at my home group in Minneapolis, Lyndhurst, was I became the guy that you'd get the newcomer comes in and he's just had his license popped for 30 days. And they'd always go, see that guy over there? His name is Perry. Ask him for a ride. And the guy would come, oh, they took my license away. I said, for how long? He said, for 30 days. I said, 30 days? I do that, I'm standing on my head. You know, then they gave it back to you? And so I lost mine for 30, then I lost it for 60, then I lost it for 90. And then what I didn't know was that I finally had it taken for 6 years. And what I tell people is the first 4 years just dragged by. But that was the greatest period of my life after 4 years. 4 years I was still sneaking out and you know, driving to meetings and stuff. But the last 2 years, I never even drove in the garage. I did not drive a car a foot. And what happened was, I was a people pleaser, still am. And what I had to do was, I had to ask people for rides. and that was tough. But like we say, the real meeting is the meeting on the way to the meeting. When you're with 2, 3, 4 drunks. And so I really, that's where for me it became. I really got to know people. It was incredible. And I had the good fortune that people knew that I was working a good program by now, and they were volunteering. I live by you, I can pick you up. And I did that for 2 years. And during that period, I got a sponsor, and I found out that my sponsor had a sponsor, so that's my grand sponsor. And he always handled me with kid gloves. And he would never give me any commands because he wasn't my sponsor. But he would say stuff like, they took my license for 6 years, and you should probably work on getting yours back, because the state of Minnesota has a law that says, well, if you wait till 6 years, you're going to find out it takes another year to get your license back. He said, you should just look into it now. And so I did. And you had to go through some sort of treatment program. I was now sober 4 years. And I went to the VA in Minneapolis. And I took a light rail and got there. Just as I got there, I was trying to time it to the nanosecond. I didn't want to get there early and have people talk to me. So I get there and they're just closed the door. And the instructor, the woman says, she comes running the door. She says, well, you're late. We don't let anybody in after whatever. And something came over me. I just looked at it and said, okay, when's the next time you can come to this rehab deal? And it was December. And I remember going, all right, I'll see you December 20th or whatever the date was. And apparently I was the only human that ever said that. So she said, all right, I'll make it a case that you can come in. And that was like a 7-week course. And we had 17 people in the class, and one stayed sober. And that was me. It was a miracle. And so that was, but then they did recommend I go to the Intense program, which was another 4 weeks of going on Mondays and Wednesdays. And that was, I don't know what they did, but they got stuff out of me I didn't even know I had in me. Fear and being afraid and stuff. And they went really deep. And I kept telling myself, I'm going to get my money's worth this time, even though the VA was, they paid it. But I wanted to get everything I could get out of it. And that's why when they said, can you do this, 6-week program Mondays? Yes, I'll do it. And so stuff came up. I spent my lifetime trying to, my mom had mental health problems and nervous breakdowns. And I thought if I could keep her laughing, she'd get well. So I was always making her laugh as a kid, as a little 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 12-year-old. And it didn't work. And I also tried to drink my dad sober my dad died when I was 27, and I tried to drink him back to life, and that didn't work either. I ended up getting and I was always court ordered to meetings. And like I said, I know where the meetings are, so I get in trouble, I'll come back. And so I get my buddy from high school, who I roommate with them after high school, he got sober 5 years before I did. And I was having problems where my wife would say, you need help, I'm going to drive you to a meeting, you better find a meeting. Well, I knew I could call up Steve. Hey, he's my sponsor. And Steve said, there's a meeting in Minneapolis, Lyndhurst Group, that's for you. So I started going to that meeting. And what was different that time than all the other times is, for the first time in my life, I went to a meeting with less than 24 hours sober. I used to think, I need some status. I'll come back when I'm 90 days sober, a long timer, And so that's the key point there, was I finally went to a meeting on my own, and I didn't lie about it. I didn't go shopping for an hour. And but I got there at 1 second to 8, and I left at 1 second after 9. And and so it was pretty rough. There was a guy there I got to meet. I'm 5 months sober now, and my whole mantra is, this is the worst life I could ever imagine, but this is far better than where I came from. And I hated every minute of being in this meeting. Of course, I didn't share, and I dodged you if you looked at me. And I always say, I'm Norwegian. I grew up Norwegian, German, and Danish, all the socially awkward races. So if I really, it was I was married, we had neighbors, and if I really liked you, I'd see you like where you two are, and I go, any closer than that, I might have to, and I never hugged a human being in my life. And it's like 3 years sober at the Lyndhurst meeting, my arms just went out, and I hugged somebody. Oh my God! And, and I found out it was okay. But anyways, so I'm 5 months sober. It's the worst life I could ever imagine anybody happening, but it was better than where I came from. And so at 7 months, I said to this guy, the reason people ask me, when I go to a meeting, if you ever been in any Seattle meetings I've been to, I always do the loud voice thing. I have a loud voice, and I just go, I'm Perry. I'm a real alcoholic. And I do that because I got it from Byron Johnson, who's deceased. And Byron was a guy that walked into the meeting with a cane. He wasn't all there. And then what he did was he shot himself in the head and survived it. And I figured, this guy is doing what he's doing. I'm 7 months sober. So at 9 months in Minneapolis, I said to him the week before, I said, will you give me a 9-month medallion? And he thought I was, and he said, yeah, of course I will. And what that did for me was that locked in that I was serious. This was no fooling around anymore. I'm asking a guy to just give me a 9-month medallion. And he shot himself in the head, and he's still going to a million meetings. I drove him. Once I got my license back, I was the driver. I'd bring him home, and he had all these AA sayings taped on the walls and the mirrors and stuff. And but the key change in me was, I knew at that moment life was no joke. Alcoholism was no joke. And so that was at 9 months sober. And then at the 9 months sober in Minneapolis, you hand the person the medallion, and then you say something. And I for the first time in my life, because I got the feedback, was I spoke honestly, and I cry. If you're a Norwegian German, you don't cry no matter what. You just take it, because you're a guy, man. You can take this stuff. And so I never cried because it didn't do any good. And I broke down, and it was a meeting of 60 people. And I broke down and cried. And these people have known me now for 9 months. And after the meeting, I would bet at least 90% of the people came up to me and hugged me. And I got things like, I always remember this girl, this little, vegan type, She's sitting there like this, and she just looks at me and goes, you finally told the truth. And then she walked away. And I realized that was the thing that changed my life. Because I then started going to that meeting. I ended up going to that meeting 7 years in a row without missing a single Tuesday night. Cool. And business meetings that I had to go out of town for were always around different days than that day. And then the other thing they did, because, again, if I really like you, you get the nod from 200 yards. And I was trying to sneak out of the room, and this guy, the grand sponsor, who got me to get my driver's license back, said, we're going out for pizza. Why don't you come with? I don't know. I've only been sober 9 months, and I don't think I'm ready for this. And I went, and I can still see the 6 people that showed up that night. So they're all in my life. and these are the people and that was where I found out, there is a fellowship, and this is how you get to know people. And it was because, and then what I really learned is forgiveness and gratitude, to live, forgiveness and gratitude. So we're late today, so I ask you forgiveness. I can give you some excuses as to why, but I won't, because you just say I made them up, and it's probably true. So, but if I live in forgiveness and gratitude and be grateful that each and every person's in my life for a reason. And I always like to work with sponsees and tell them, when I say every person in your life, this means people, you're sitting on a bus, a plane, a train, or wherever. Why did that person sit next to you? Probably don't know. I mean, well, they had ticket 23A and you had 23B. But I believe on a spiritual level, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for every person I meet. And the one exercise I'd like to give sponsees is when they're new and angry, the ones that will bite your fingers off when you meet them. I said, here's what I want you to do. Make a gratitude list. But I want you to, when you walk into a room, just pick someone out and say two things good about them to yourself, and don't share it with anybody. And they can be pretty basic. Like I would say, a lot of times I'd say that's so-and-so. He's at a meeting and he's sober tonight. That's two things. And then, sometimes if I get to know a guy, I would say, this guy, I just like his voice. He's got one of those whatever deep voices, and I like that. So I say, okay, I like his voice, and I like the way he dresses, and that stuff will do miracles for you because it changes your whole outlook in life. Instead of saying, what is it? Pour me a drink. Yeah. It's because you're finding two things you like about him. And I've gone to so many meetings in Minneapolis. I remember like a couple years after I'd gone to a meeting, or this particular meeting, and there was a woman there, young woman, and she was just hurting. You could see it all over her. And the meeting ended, and I just quickly went up to her and said, "Can I just have a couple words with you? And I'm really happy you're here. But I said, just try this exercise. And you can do whatever you want with it." And I said, find two things good about every person, place, or thing that you walk into. You go to the Thanksgiving dinner with the relatives you don't like, they probably don't like seeing you either. Well. Yeah. So why not, make the best of it? Anyways, so about, the way these coincidences happen is I had this woman friend that said, I'm going to be 5 years old, and I want you to come to this meeting to give me the medallion. And so I did. And I hadn't seen that girl I gave her find two good things. I forgot about her. I'm walking in this meeting, and this girl in the middle of the room jumps up out of her chair, says, "Perry!" And I'm going, okay, she's young, she's pretty, why is she talking to me, And she told me the story that she did that exercise, and she said, I still do it, and that changed my life. And I want you to know, you just saved my life. That's the stuff you get in these rooms. People, they save my life, and they say I saved their life. And I had this sponsee that's now got 20 years in Minneapolis, and he would always say, the one thing he said about me, he said, I always notice you're generous with your time. Because if you ask me to sponsor you, I say yes. And if you ask me to, I would pick guys up at Empire Way, or take them home rather. And I had this guy that would be at Empire Way, and he goes, they told me to ask you for a ride. I said, okay. He said, well, you don't have to. It might be I said, okay. And then he said, well, and I said, where do you live? No, we actually got in the car and I started driving. I go, where do you live? He goes, well, I live in whatever, but I was really not sure. I live actually 6 blocks farther than that. And I said, I'll give you a ride home. And if you live up in Everett, I go, you're lucky, because on Tuesday nights I make the wide swing when I go home, and I always go through Everett so I can take you home. you know, and those are the things that I do that keep me sober. But it's just giving back, you know, that which has been so freely given to me. And I wouldn't. So this summer, in July of this year, I went back to Minneapolis for a week. I picked a random day. I wanted to have a week off that was just completely random. So there weren't any holidays or birthdays. I went home. My sons are older. My ex-wife is there, and she's nice. And but we have, you know, they gave up some lake property in Wisconsin and stuff. And I just wanted to go up to the lake and spend 3 days up there, just in the woods. And so I buy the ticket. I buy the ticket. 5 minutes later, I get a text on my phone from somebody who never texts me. It's my buddy's common-in-law wife, I guess you'd call her. She says, you know, Pat would really love it if you came and gave him a 20-year medallion, because he says he's never found another sponsor that he liked as much as you. And so I just bought my ticket 5 minutes ago, and I'll be out of town when he turns 20, like a week later. So what did I do? And what did my sponsor tell me to do? My sponsor just said, well, what did you do? I said, I bought another ticket. And he said, that's the right answer. And then what happened was I was so jumbled up because I was, you know, doing all these tickets and some other stuff was on my mind, that I bought the second plane ticket, and I put the wrong day on it. So I was leaving the day of his medallion. So what did I do? I bought another ticket. And I don't like to get hassled, so I didn't even call and cancel my other flight. Because one time I canceled a flight and they gave me a $160 credit. And when I went to use it, they told me there's a $160 service fee. So on this ticket, I just said the heck with it. I just get 2 tickets to Seattle on the same plane. But it's because I missed it by 1 day, but I didn't fault anybody. I mean, do I like to do that? No, I don't. But I realized, and I talked to my sponsor, I mean, it was quite a privilege that he wanted me to give him the 20-year medallion. And I had gotten a 20-year medallion. I don't know if you guys remember Vince, some of you do. He gave me a really special medallion when I turned 20, you know, and then he passed away. And so I've got a medallion. Stacy says, you need a medallion? I've got one. And I said, no, I've got one I'm going to give to him. So I gave him this one that I was given at 20 years sober. And the beauty about these rooms is who do we end up being best friends with? Usually the person you least, you know, the person who I thought could give me the least is giving me the most. I found out that there were people that I was dead sure that they didn't like me, and they probably didn't. And but we had a service commitment at this other meeting in Minneapolis. And since I was on, you know, the state of Minnesota really, you know, it said it'd be nice if he just didn't drive for 6 years. And so I said, I'll do the service, but I need a ride. Well, this guy I found out was working the crowd. Who wants to give this guy a ride to the thing at noon? And that's where I got a lot of relationships out of it, was being in a car with other people. Traveling up, and I do it here too, where Empire Way goes up to Canada every now and then to the meeting up there, and you know they're just fun trips. It's life. It's just a good life. I've had both I had my son with me one time, and I had my sister with me one time. And you walk into a grocery store or wherever you're going, and somebody walks up and says, "Perry," and you know, and then we hug and we smile and we laugh, and then we realized that I have plenty of time. So, you know, we just hug. So we hug and hug and laugh. But I'm really happy I made that 20-year trip for him. I mean, you know, 20 years is a big deal, and he wanted me over anybody else. And I thought, well, I can afford it. Why wouldn't I do it? And so I went back, and you know, and then how opposites attract. This guy was going to meetings where he needed a sponsor, and his best friend was this other guy that had like a year, He said, there's a guy named Perry. That's your sponsor. So then he sees me and I'm wearing like a native Indian garb. I didn't think I was going to have coffee with anybody. So I have this kind of thing on this, and he goes, no, anybody but him. And he said, well, he's your ride because you need a ride. And he was just coming out of a treatment center, which we call, it's the last one on the block. If it's kind of like the Sally here at the Salvation Army. By the time you get to Salvation Army, they're not going to deal with you if you don't take it seriously. And so he ended up, and I remember the big point with him was, well, I'm a guy, I don't like to talk to people, because my deal was, I'll sponsor you, but I have only one requirement, and that requirement is you call me every day for 30 days. What's a good time for you? I love to say that. What's a good time for you to call me? Say like 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. And I go, okay, you call me at 5 to 3, I'm not going to answer the phone. You call me at 5 after 3, it's fun if you think I'm going to answer that phone. I'm going to pick up at 3 o'clock and you better be on it. So you get to see the guy. Okay. But he said, I don't talk to people. I said, look, my only requirement is you call me every day at 3 o'clock because you said that worked for you. And all I want you to do is say hello and hang up. And if you want to chat more than that, there's no chat. And we ended up becoming like really, really close friends. And we've been all over for meetings and stuff but there's a point where I sponsored him and he'll give me credit for doing a lot that made his life better. But there was a long period where I had a lot of issues and he basically sponsored me. So a real sponsorship relationship is a two-way street. There will be a time when the sponsee needs to sponsor his sponsor. And so he's done things that I will always be grateful for, and honored that he asked me to give him that 20-year medallion. So it's a good life. I lost my brother in September. I mean, I come from a long line of nice people, but my brother was the nicest one in the family. And and he never drank, never smoked, never did anything, but he got leukemia. And AA taught me, what did I do? I went home. I spent a whole year. I'd go to Minneapolis, and I went in December, and because we didn't want him to get germs and COVID and all that stuff, I stayed in his house for a month. Normally, when I go back to Minneapolis, I go look up all my old AA friends. But no, my function to be there was to be with my brother. And so I stayed in Minneapolis in his house for 30 days without, visiting anybody. And that's what AA taught me to do. You want to be there for him. And he fought it real hard. And so I have 2 sons. What did my 2 sons do this year when I was there? They go, my son just goes like this and hands me this thing. Yeah. They made a plaque honoring my brother. And they bought a tree, a real nice special tree up we have a 1.5 acre lot up there. And they planted it and bought this whatever, and got the thing. Never said a word to me. They just, walked up to me and handed this thing to me. And I'm looking at it in memory of Timothy Highland. And so my kids are the best that you could ever hope for. And do they have issues? Sure they do. But that's the kind of stuff that happens. Because now they've seen me 25 years sober. But they also saw me when they had to be lifted in a hospital bed where they told me I had no chance of surviving. And the doctor had never seen a person survive this accident, so he was flown in to witness it. And I thought that was just good service. I said that to the nurse. I said, I can't believe how well you served me. You got charts all over the floor. So that's but every day has its challenges. Every day has its rewards. And it was tough coming into COVID I'm not a Zoomer. I don't like the Zoom meetings. And so it was tough going to meetings. And I really, I went back to a New Purpose group, which was the first group I went to when I got here like 14 years ago. And it's, I'll finish by saying I have an eye issue. What do they call it? Cataracts. So they fix one eye, and if I walk around with a patch on, I've got 20/20 vision. But if I do this one, I've got like 50/800 vision. And I just went to the hospital yesterday, the VA, and they said, "Do you want to have your surgery done on the other eye?" I said, "No, I want to be like Popeye. I'll just wear a patch." So I said, "Yes, sign me up." And then, so anyways, I just found out yesterday that they'll probably set me up in December. So what am I doing? I accept what they gave me. I don't fight it. I don't do anything. I'm just very grateful that they allowed me now to get the second eye done. But that won't be till December. And I because of that, I have not been driving. And I was always the guy that liked to drive, but it's too dangerous for me to drive with all the lights on the road. And that's why I thought Jack would be a good 15-minute speaker. With that, I'll pass.
Thanks.